Hey, so this is edition 8 of the series that I'm currently working on, Scrolling. Scrolling is a video series where I'm grabbing subjects that I'm interested in, having a little look at them myself privately, thinking about them, and then thinking out loud in this video series. The point of this is just to help me dive a little bit deeper on the things that I'm interested in and also learn how to articulate myself better. And in football, you have feeder clubs, right, where you have these smaller clubs that bigger clubs use as a means to develop their talent. So the young players will go to the feeder clubs and they'll sort of develop them, and then as they get better they'll come to the bigger football clubs. In this instance, Scrolling is kind of the feeder series. The idea is that it's going to spark the fire for series in the future. I mean, it may end up being the main series in its own right if it keeps developing and ends up being really good, but we'll see. For now, the pressure's off. I'm just trying to keep it simple and low risk to make it easier for me to do it, because it's hard creating stuff online. So let's get stuck into this video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act: A Way of Being. I mean, I should have brought the book with me, because if I brought the book with me, then I could say for certain that is the title. I want to talk about a specific chapter. So, the chapter is called, there's Rick Rubin himself, the chapter is called Point of Reference. And I'm going for something a little bit different on this one, as well as it being a book rather than something off the internet. I have also not, if you have a look at the bigger Fig Jam, I haven't added as many notes, and that's intentional. I like the idea of having a cleaner look of the Fig Jam, just to make it a bit more artistic and a bit less thrown together. Not that that's a bad thing, because some of them ended up looking really nice, and also just because the less there is on the page, the less I get confused by what it is I wanted to say. I mean, ideally, I've not done this week, but ideally in the future, I should be able to consult my notebook and talk from my notebook, use the notes from my notebooks to trigger me. But here I'm just going to do it free ball, if you will. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read through this chapter bit by bit and talk about the things that it triggered in me. First of all, or second of all, or third of all, whichever of all I'm on. You can see that I've got, I don't know if I'm pointed, let me look at the things. Right, my little boys scratched me today, so that's why I've got a red thing on the end of my nose. Fifth of all, this book, Rick Rubin's book, is possibly the best book I've ever read on creativity. It's full of diamonds, and I really mean that. Like, I'm not just exaggerating. I am going to read this book multiple times this year so that I can dig into each individual chapter and mine it for the gems that are within them. This is one chapter, and by writing this out, as well as having read it in the first place, and I've read it a couple of times now, by writing this out, I've actually already gained a better understanding of it. And I've listened to multiple episodes of Rick Rubin on podcasts. His name's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? Of Rick Rubin on podcasts. And today I was listening to his podcast with Rich Roll. Rich Roll? No. I've forgotten the guy's name, but he is a doctor from the UK, and his podcast's really cool. I'll mention it on the next episode because I want to shout him out, or in the description or something. And he said that in a way, writing what he has written about is really hard, because it's like trying to describe smoke, and you can't describe smoke. And that is very much what creativity is like. If you try and describe it, you almost take away from it, a bit like a mushroom trip, or anything that is spiritual. And I think that creativity is kind of spiritual, really. A lot of times we don't know where the magical creative ideas come from. They hit people out of nowhere. That's where the concept of the muse has come from. So writing a book about creativity is clearly really hard, but Rick Rubin has somehow managed to use the best words possible to do so. And I think that's probably why I feel the need to go and reread it, because in order to write about it, he almost has to do it in a roundabout way and not be too explicit, if that makes sense. So yeah, I feel the need to dive in and keep reading. And obviously the important thing is also to put the things that I learn into action, which I will be doing, and that's what I'm doing here. It's really lit a fire under me, and yeah. Without further ado, let me actually talk about this chapter. So the chapter's called Point of Reference, and it kind of hit home for me because it's as per the chapter, it's a really original way of looking at things, right? So I'm just going to read a bit here. Every so often you hear a new recording by an artist you've been following for a period of time who's breaking strange new ground. It feels odd to hear the work at first. It seems unfamiliar. You have no context for it. You may not even be sure you like it. You may even reject it. And so I'll stop there for now. And yeah, this has happened to me multiple times with the artists that I love, and that is why I have these pictures of these chaps here. This is fair. Hold on, let me make sure that my window is in the window, right? Okay, I don't know if I did it right. I'm going to be a bit more on it from this point onwards because I don't know if you could see that when I was reading it, but it's cool. This is why these chaps are here. We've got Frank Ocean, James Blake, and also Bon Iver. And the reason for that is each three of these artists, and I'll describe them that way because Bon Iver is an artist and not a band. Each three of these artists have created music that at first I've been a little bit, maybe even disappointed in. When I first heard Channel Orange by Frank Ocean, I was a bit like, because I liked Frank Ocean from listening to Nostalgia Ultra when he was a little bit of a lesser known artist, and also he had this thing called the Lonnie Bro collection, which I think was a combination of his writing, music that he'd written, and some songs that he'd written and sang, because a lot of the songs were sung by other people. I think that's what it was anyway. Channel Orange, I was just a bit like, huh? I didn't understand some of the songs, and the same happened with Blonde, to the point where I was a bit like, well, maybe he's not as good as I thought he was. James Blake in general, when I first listened to him, I was like, this is a bit weird. But I'd seen so many people saying how good he was, and how creative he was, and so I kept going. Bon Iver with his I think this is his latest album, I, and it was just a bit different. Is that his latest? I think it is. I think it's the one. I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is. I don't know if that's the right album that I should be talking about. I might have made a mistake, but it's the one with the songs on where it's 8 circles or 20 over soon. Might be over soon. That one. Delightful singing. All of these artists with these specific albums and more of their music have really thrown me off when I've listened to it and really confused me. And they are actually, conveniently, as per Rick Rubin's chapter. Now, in fact, you know what? Let me read the next bit. So I did reject these albums at first, and I was like, not sure if I like it. Still, you're compelled to listen again and again. A new pattern begins to emerge in your brain. What was strange becomes a little bit more familiar. You start to see how it connects to what came before. It begins to click in your mind whether you like it or not. And then one day you realise I should be looking at this side of the screen, sorry. And then one day you realise you can't live without it. And that is what happened, especially with Frank Ocean and Bon Iver. James Blake, it's a little bit longer ago for me when I got into James Blake. It was at uni. Frank Ocean as well, but I listen to James Blake a little bit less now, and these two I am absolutely obsessed with. Probably my favourite musicians. Aside from, I mean, it's not particularly relevant here, but as well as the Beatles and also Frightened Rabbit, the band, who are no longer a thing, unfortunately, for very sad reasons. So yeah, I cannot live without Bon Iver and Frank Ocean. Frank Ocean's music is, I will forever call Frank Ocean the greatest artist of my generation, the greatest artist of my life. I love his music so much. I cannot express it in words. And it seems like he might be releasing a new album this year because he's touring at Coachella. Funny thing, I actually went and saw Frank Ocean at a festival in Denmark in Aarhus, I think you pronounce it, and he was brilliant, but it was pissing it down, and like all artists, he took ages to come out, and so it kind of took away from it a little bit. But yeah, and Bon Iver cancelled on me when I was supposed to see him in Luxembourg, which I was gutted about, but I'll get to see them when I was supposed to see them in I think people just abandon the fact that Bon Iver is a band, whereas it's obviously Justin Vernon and I don't know who else, which is kind of naughty. But Justin Vernon's also in Volcano Choir and the other band that he's in that are really cool that I can't remember the name of. Anyway, I cannot live without them, like I said. So, you know, this is relevant. When I read this, I was like, yeah, that clicks with me. I agree with that. When a beloved artist thwarts our expectations or a new artist defies known precedents, it can be confusing. Initially, the work may feel unsatisfying or of no interest whatsoever. Once we get over the hump of adapting ourselves to the new palette, these can end up being our favourite works. Conversely, save that little point there. You can read it. You can read ahead like in school, like I used to do. I used to think I was dead clever for reading way ahead of the rest of the class. Oh, no, it wasn't even that. I just got pissed off that people reading aloud used to stumble over the words, and it would really wind me up. So I just read like chapters and chapters ahead, and it's not really the thing that you tend to get in trouble for. This is kind of reiterating the point of what the last bit said, and let's go down to this bit. Conversely, work we like immediately might not have that same power down the road, and I think that's because, without being too putting it all in the same box, the work that you get straight away, it's like pop, really. And pop is a really, really, really wide genre, isn't it? Because what is considered popular music changes. What's played on the radio changes. Now, I mean, like what back in the day was grime, and I think it's got a new name now, trip and stuff like that. It gets played on the radio, which is a bit trip. I'm old, man. What is trip? Trap. Sorry, that is embarrassing. Trip hop. Trip hop's a thing now, isn't it? Is Kid Cudi trip hop? I don't know my music genres. I just fucking listen to it. Work that we like immediately might not have the same power down the road, and I agree with that. These things stayed with me because they took so long to cook. But again, yeah, like the catchy songs, they piss you off a little bit as you listen to them a bit more, and they don't have as much depth. I would suppose that a true genius would be able to do both. I mean, not saying that it having to grow on you is not genius, but someone who is genius in a different way would be able to make both popular music that is catchy but then has this really subconscious extra thing going on where the song grows on you in a different way. And you find that with TV shows and stuff, where you go back and you watch an episode of a TV show again and you get new jokes, and again and again. And a lot of the popular cartoons have that. South Park, The Simpsons, and I think they probably work very hard on that. Now let's move on. The very same phenomenon can happen while making your own work. All right, this is the clever bit for me. Try not to swear too much, Jack. This is the really clever bit. I don't know quite how to action this yet, and it's part of the reason why I'm digging into it more here. The very same phenomenon can happen while making your own work. If you're looking for solutions to a problem or a new project to begin, you may react in a strongly negative way to an option that springs forth. This can be when the idea is so new that you don't have the context for it. So let's just go back to all of these lot. Frank Ocean does new stuff with his music that people aren't used to. Bon Iver does new stuff with his music. I think Ben Howard did something really new with one of his albums. And I'm not sure, because me and my girlfriend love Ben Howard, who we actually went to see in Lyon in like this open, like old school theatre thing, which was brilliant. Return to the topic at hand, Jack. But Ben Howard made this new song where he tried something new. I'm not sure if we ever quite got on board with it. Maybe a couple of songs for me, not so much my partner, who was a bigger fan before I was, and kind of didn't necessarily like the newest album. I mean, it's understandable, isn't it? You like an artist for the music that they make, and you have to be very attached to the person. to almost jump genres with them. And that's hard because people do like the genres that they like. Not everyone can just go, I'll listen to Frank Ocean doing this type of music, then this type of music, then this. Bon Iver, where he was more folky, and then he went a bit more electronic, which is kind of what Ben Howard did. When people do new things, like I think the notorious example is Bob Dylan with his electric guitar. When artists in any form do new things, we're not used to it. We don't have the scaffold to be able to climb that building, if you will. That's a terrible metaphor, but we don't have the glasses, the particular glasses that allow us to view that creation in its full light. Still not sure that's a good metaphor, but I've probably got something across there. So we don't know whether we like it or not, because we just it's like staring at something you've never seen before. You're baffled at first, you're confused, you're trying to place it in the world, and that is what artists do when they create something new. So then, because that was about making your own work, right? That's the cool part, is that you therefore might think that what you're making, you might think, no, that's bizarre, that's absolutely bizarre, what an odd thing for me to have created. And this happens to me sometimes, where I'll look back at stuff that I've written and I'm like, that's so weird. And even when I did it, I thought, this is so weird. And at the time, I thought that I had the necessary I want to say balls to do it, to put it out there, and then I haven't done it. And it's because I've just thought, no, it's too weird, people either won't like it or will just ridicule me for it or whatever, so I haven't done it. But actually, that may be a sign that you could be creating something new, and you just don't have the context for what you have created, what you have come up with, and therefore your assessment of it is inaccurate. And I mean, a lot of Rick Rubin's book is essentially, and I'm gonna really boil it down, probably inaccurately here, but to me anyway, this is what I've gotten from it, and I know Rick appreciates different interpretations of different pieces of work. A lot of what I've gotten is that you should just create and not really care about the audience. And if you're trying to make money, you're trying to make money. And this book has done a whole thing for me about making art versus monetizing what you're doing and making money from content or whatever. And the two things seem at odds a lot of the time, especially if you're thinking about the monetary aspect of it too much. I think the art gets corrupted. I mean, this is an age-old argument, which I'm not going to dive in too much here, but a lot of what Rick seems to be saying throughout the book, or what has really penetrated my soul, is that stop thinking about the end, the receiver, when you're making it. Just create it. What you create is what you create. And if it's weird, it's weird. And if people don't like it, people don't like it. But there's every chance that you create something really weird and people are like, what's that? But then someone goes, you know what, I kind of like that. And either they then share it and help other people to get into it, and it turns out, actually, this is a new thing, we like it. Or someone might be inspired from it. Someone might take even just one thing. You might have made a really, really weird piece of art, piece of music, drawing, piece of writing, movie, whatever, and it is weird in the whole, and it doesn't really gel, and it's not great, but there might be one aspect of it, and there's definitely examples of this that I cannot think of, but there might be one aspect of it that someone goes, yes, that is cool, and then puts it in their movie with the right other pieces that go with it, and magic happens, and you have contributed to the creative canon, if you will, the cultural canon, the canon of art. I should have stopped where I was then, because I think that was a nice little rant, hopefully. It's funny, I haven't really listened to many of these back yet, and I need to do that so that I can look at how I've been talking, assess it, and think to myself, well, how could I make that better? This is a whole thing. I don't need to talk about this here, although I like to be a little bit meta. What have I read? There we go. Right, I'm down to this bit, I reckon. So when we don't have context, new ideas appear foreign or awkward. Sometimes the ideas that least match our expectations are the most innovative. By definition, revolutionary ideas have no context. They invent their own context. They invent their own. Yeah, kind of re-thingies on what I was talking about there. The newest, coolest ideas, the things that are going to change things. They look really weird at first. They don't fit in the world. They don't fit in the world as we know it. A lot of just innovations. I mean, innovation in all aspects of life is art. It's creativity, if you think about it. But a lot of innovations at first, people look at it like, like that's not going to be a thing. Like that's not going to work. Mobile phones look stupid at first, etc., etc. You can think of your own ideas there, you lazy bastard. I think that's an insult I've used on you quite a few times, isn't it, Mr. and Mrs. and Master and Ms. Viewer? Right. When we initially experience the radically new, our first instinct might be to push it away and think, this isn't for me. And sometimes it may not be. Other times it could lead to our most enduring, important work. Right, so I briefly mentioned this earlier. This is the actionable element of it, right? This is the bit that you should circle and write down and internalize, and it's what I need to internalize. Be aware of strong responses. If you're immediately turned off by an experience, it's worth examining why. Powerful reactions often indicate deeper wells of meaning, and perhaps by exploring them, you'll be led to the next step on your creative path. So what like I'm not sure if this is necessarily relevant. My thing is, what's interesting for me is I rarely hate a piece of work, and using this paragraph as a jump off point. If I hate something from now on, which doesn't happen a lot, if I really dislike it, I should dig into it and be like, hold on, what is it about this I hate, because it's having a strong response. He talks about polarity of reaction in you personally, but also viewers in other places. He's talked about a lot on the podcasts, actually. Great art polarizes. I think Kanye West said that once as well. They either hate it or they love it, but that's what you want. You don't want everyone to be okay with it, you know, unless you're just in the pop world, which I suppose that's a good response. But let's be a bit clearer on this. Be aware of strong responses, right? Because this is with regard to the personal, with your creation. And I'm talking to myself here a bit, as you can see. This is people say this a lot with the work, with the blogs that they create. These are actually notes to me or whatever. Or Alex Hormozy talks about his Twitter and he says this is actually just me making notes, which is cool. And this is what I'm doing. I'm talking to myself through the medium of public YouTube video. Whenever you or I make something and you're like, nah, that's shit, that's proper shit, have a look at it again. Don't throw it out into the bin straight away. If you make a video that you really don't like and you think is crap, look at it again. See if actually there is something different there that kind of worked. This is why I said I haven't quite found a way to action this yet, because that's the actionable line. Be aware of strong responses. Let me read it again. If you're immediately turned off by an experience, it's worth examining why. Powerful reactions often indicate deeper wells of meaning, and perhaps by exploring them, you'll be led to the next step on your creative path. Yeah, so I guess really it's not just to be aware of strong responses, but also to be aware of things that seem radically new. Be aware of whether you're dismissing something you've done on the basis that, no, that's not how people do this. And just make, I think really, the real way to put this into action is to basically make crazy shit, like make some really, really weird shit. And even if you know that most people are gonna listen to it and see it and be like, what the hell is that? Like, what even is that? I've never heard something like that before. It's odd. It's I don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me. Then maybe that's a good sign. So it's not just be aware of strong responses for yourself, but actually be aware if you share it with other people of the strong responses they have, because that may be a sign that you're onto something. Especially if, I guess that, yeah, like I said a minute ago, especially if it doesn't fit in with the work in that particular genre that has already been established. Say like, no, we don't use that instrument in hip hop, or no, that's not really it. I mean, the problem is that so many people are creating art right now, and music is a great example. There are so many musicians because the cost of being able to make music has gone down. All you need is a computer and you can make beats. That people are trying everything, but there's still always room to be innovative. I think there is, because new things are coming out in the world, and when the world changes and we see things that we haven't seen before, a la what's that saying? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. When things are changing and they're not repeating, but they rhyme, you can use the new things, put them together with other new things, put them together with old things to make something cool, and it will be a different combination of things than there has been before, and that makes something interesting. And it might be shit, it might be great, but shit might only be shit in the context of that it's never been done before. I'm quitting while I'm ahead. Heraclitus is here because does Heraclitus actually come in? I've got Farewell to Arms here by Ernest Hemingway, because I read A Farewell to Arms when I was at uni, and I was reading it. I was kind of like, this isn't that great, is it? Because it's a classic, right? Ernest Hemingway, one of the most famous writers of all time. A Farewell to Arms is his most famous book, and I was like, is this that great? And something happened as I finished the book where it felt like a lived experience. It was so odd. I cannot explain it. I really can't, and I need to reread it. But I read the book, and as I was reading it, I wasn't particularly into it. And it was one of the first sort of classics that I'd read. The first Hemingway that I'd ever read, and actually the last, which is a bit silly. And so that's why that's here, because I think that did that to me. I hadn't experienced writing like that, and so I had no context for it. And by the end, it sunk into me, and it just is what it is in my top 10 books ever. And I didn't particularly enjoy it when I read it, which is wild. Which is also something it shares with the country Brazil. Very odd one. When I was there, I was a bit unsure of it, and then afterwards I was like, Brazil is the flipping best. So Heraclitus is here. I'll say the quote, or at least you know what, I have my notebook here, bear with me, let me sing you a song. Hum a song. There he is, Heraclitus. In my notebook I've written him down as Heraclitus. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he is not the same man. I hope you could take that in with me saying it sillily. Swivelly. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he is not the same man. That's more of a I feel like that's a note that I if I looked at it clearly I would have gone, does it really fit, does it need to be in here? But the reason that it's cool in general is that if you know what, I'm having it I'm taking that as actually a good point, because listen to Blonde, listen to Channel Orange, no context, Overgrown, whatever, for me anyway, no context, do not understand where this has come from, what it means, why that instrument is there, why Frank Ocean's changing the song in the middle of the song, etc, etc. That's kind of weird, that's not how things are done. Is it good? I don't know. Listen to it the next time. I have the context of having already listened to it and the familiarity, and it makes a little bit more sense. I'm still a bit like, what are you doing, Frank? Stop it, man. I don't get it. You were my favourite artist and you've ruined it. Third listen, I am in love with Frank Ocean, and he is now the only man. I've mentioned I don't mean this, but I often say that he's the only man that I would find myself in a romantic situation with. Should he be interested, I would be open to it, because I'm in love with him, absolutely in love with him. Let's get him up there, because oh my god, I cannot wait until he releases an album this year. I cannot wait for it. I really cannot wait. Anyway, cool. I think we've done some interesting things there. We've searched for the context of, you know what, full roundabout. Let's go all the way around. This idea of you may not have the context for your own art, right? You may not have the context for the ideas that you're coming up with, and therefore you may not actually end up using what could be really revolutionary ideas because you don't have the context, you don't understand them, and therefore, no, this doesn't make sense, it doesn't fit, this isn't music, this isn't a movie, this isn't cool, whatever. That, and the reason that I have struggled to action it, and also let me go down because I'm looking at the wrong screen, I'm sorry. And the reason that I have struggled to kind of get to grips with that last paragraph, and I've kind of understood it in real time there a little bit, is that is a new idea for which I don't have context. It really is, because I've never thought that could apply. I've always thought the thing about so the first bit was not new to me. I know for a fact that the best music, the best books, the things that I love confuse me at first. The best books are hard to read because I'm not used to the style, because they're writing in some messed up way. Jack Kerouac, On the Road, like it's a new thing to you, and you don't get it, and therefore you almost want to throw it in the bin, but you don't, and you keep going, as Rick Rubin says. That's old news. I get it. Made that observation myself. But this, where he says you can apply that to your own art, is like, shit, man. So I need to not just be jumping at the bad ideas, what seem like the bad ideas, and throwing them away. And it's why there's a saying that is, a good idea not executed, a bad idea executed is better than a good idea forgotten, or something like that, because you can have a bad idea, execute, iterate, and it becomes something magical. You can have a good idea, if you never execute on it, if you never make anything from it, what's the point? Better off not existing. You're silly for letting it go. But yeah, a bad idea that you work on is much better. Okay, cool. That's it. I'm going to finish up there. I've really enjoyed talking about this one. I enjoy talking about creativity. I'm probably going to do it more. I might also talk about more chapters in Rick Rubin's book so as to understand them better myself, because this has really helped me figure this out, and I hope that this has been interesting to you. I'll be back next week probably with another video, and yeah, have a good day, have a good life, enjoy your dinner, your breakfast, enjoy your tea, your coffee, whatever you're doing right now. Enjoy the rest of your life. Okay, cool. See you later. Bye bye.